Hey lads, by popular demand, few of you requested more commentary videos, so I decided to do one for Azure Vault, which is considered to be one of the harder dungeons in the pool. However, I consider this to be one of the fair dungeons, so to speak. If you do everything correct, if you do the mechanics, there's nothing to be scared about in this dungeon. So here we go. This is a Tyrannical week, but this first pool could be very scary, and it's not uncommon for you to actually lose them on 4 to 5 weeks. These flowers, the mystic casts they do, if they go off, they put a nasty dot on you, and the dots actually stack. So if few of those casts go off, it could be a very, very bad situation for your party. So on 45 weeks, as I said, you'll see us lust here, and you will also see me dropping Spirit Links, Ascendants, and everything, just to make sure that the team survives. On a non-Tyrannical week, though, make sure to interrupt on cooldown, pretty much. And also, I don't know if you saw that, but I used my cap totem straight away so that I interrupt all the flowers at once. We did pull 2 of those, we managed to survive without too much trouble, and now we actually triggered the whelp, because we're doing a special route to skip to the 3rd boss after we kill the 2nd boss. I'll talk more about this later on. Now, the Crystal Furies that you see over here, they're actually stunnable, and once they do the piercing shards that you see right now, that's actually a frontal. So your melee should be very careful not to stand in front of them, but behind them, because they also put a very nasty dot on you, and your tank is going to get hit a lot, right? Because he usually cannot dodge those. If you can stun and prevent the cast, that's optimal, but otherwise be prepared to heal your tank, especially on 4 to 5 weeks. The next pull is pretty straightforward. If you're not doing the skip, you can actually pull the first 3 flowers into this room. There's 3 more flowers here, and there is this little tree, which has 2 important things to be aware of. The first one is the rain on the ground. Just make sure you move out of it, and don't walk on those puddles, because they actually do a lot of damage. And then the other one is a cast that will just put one of your team members to sleep. So this is also something that you would like to interrupt. Other than that, those pulls, as long as you have your interrupts aligned correctly, which of course is not that easy in a puck, those pulls will be relatively easy. It's a Spiteful week, so we might take a little extra time dealing with the shades. But next, you have the 2 flowers over here, and there's 2 more flowers on the left. My tank managed to pull all 4 of them. So basically, same deal here, right? Make sure to interrupt. Use your cap totem. I'm a Tauren, so every now and then I might go in and try to use my War Stomp, but just try to CC the flowers as much as possible, and make sure no casts go off. If casts go off, be prepared to pop cooldowns, right? Don't be scared to pop Ascendants, to pop Spirit Link, etc. You will probably see me popping all of my cooldowns on 4 to 5 weeks, because it hurts even more there. Now, there's 2 more pulls here. The tank managed to pull the flowers and the tree behind those whelps. You can actually trigger the whelps first and deal with that pull, and then do this one. That's up to you. That's up to your tank. But this is basically the same pull as before. 3 flowers and a tender, a tree. Erratic Growth is the cast that he was just doing. Make sure to interrupt that. This is actually going to target a single person, but if he's put to sleep, you can dispel them, but then this could actually chain to other people. So just try to interrupt it, and don't deal with this mechanic in any case. Next, we are triggering more whelps. So same thing here. The big shard is basically almost the same as the small ones, with the difference that you cannot stun it, right? So the casts there are definitely going to go off, and the big shard also has the circle that you need to run out of. On hierarchies, this is going to one-shot you, so make sure you're paying attention when you're pulling those big shards, because you don't want to have members dead in the middle of the pool. Same thing here. If you can stun, that's perfect, because the tank is going to get less dots. And even if you do it later in the pool, he can actually reset the dots, which happens right now. Yes, the mobs are almost dead, but if he can reset those dots, that's actually optimal. Whether or not you're going to pull this or not, the fastest way after this is to jump. Don't go over the stairs, it's much faster to jump. Yes, it's a little bit of a fall damage, but at the end of the day, you can heal through it, and also you can also use your Gust of Wind so you don't take damage when you fall. Next, you need to kill everything in this room before the boss is actually active. There's few trees here, but there's no flowers, which is nice. So the main thing here, watch the ground, because you don't want to die in one of the puddles. It's a projectile, so it actually takes a little bit of time to hit the ground, but nevertheless, if it hits you, it's bad. The tank is usually going to try and pull everything in this room at the same time, because there's not that many kicks going off. Right now, the trees there, you can basically watch the trees that are chasing the tank, because the melee is not going to interrupt those, so you can take that assignment if you'd like. And other than that, there actually should be nothing to heal here, because nobody's supposed to get hit by anything, right? Those trees don't do much damage to the tank, and as I said on hierarchies, if you get hit by something on the ground, you might be dead as well. Make sure to interrupt, and then you can just DPS. Not a good thing to drop your healing rain, because the tank is going to be moving everything. Even if he stops and doesn't pull the next tree, he might have to avoid the stuff on the ground. So just chain lightning and use your lava burst procs, and that should pretty much be it. After you kill all the trees, the boss is going to activate, and to be honest, all the bosses in this dungeon look scary, but once you learn the mechanics, once you know what to do, there's actually nothing to be afraid of. All of those fights are pretty much scripted, and if you know what you're doing, it's actually pretty easy. So, let's talk about this boss a little more. Alright, so the tank is going to pull, and the boss has a tank burst. It's a debuff that you're going to see on my tank in just a little bit, and this actually hurts a lot. So there's nothing to do before the first mechanics come in. Infuse Strike, that's the debuff, and my tank actually spell reflected, so now all you can do is DPS. But if that debuff goes off, and it will go off eventually, you will usually want to heal your tank, because he'll be taking a lot of damage. The boss has a fronto, and the whole point of this fight is to break all those little trees around the boss. That's crucial, and the tank can use the fronto to actually reduce the number of the trees before this phase comes in. So the boss is going to do a little circle around him, and then you are going to get, of course, you need to stay out of that circle, and then you are going to get a circle around you. Make sure you don't stay on top of the trees, because you take damage, but make sure that the circle kills the trees around you. So this happens again right now. He'll get the little circle in a little bit again, and if you don't kill all the trees, especially on Tyrannical week, that might be a wipe, because the boss is going to do much more damage with the next mechanics that I'm going to discuss in just a second. The circles that you get around you, they don't do damage to you, so that's fine, as you're going to see in just a second. But after they explode, you take a little bit of damage. As you're going to see right now, I'm not popping any defensive, so it's not that scary, but you need to heal everybody up as soon as possible. Don't be afraid to use cooldowns, because right now the boss is doing Consuming Stomp. That's the other scary mechanic. That also does AoE damage, and that's why you need to top everyone off. If you don't kill all the trees, that mechanic actually does even more damage, and you can wipe. So that's why I said it's crucial to kill all the trees. And you can talk with your group and assign where everybody's going in before the boss starts, to make sure that you're not overlapping and you're killing all the trees. So basically, top everybody up, then be prepared for the Consuming Stomp. But after the Consuming Stomp goes off, you're not in a hurry to heal everybody up again, right? Because there's no damage that should happen at this point. This now is the important part. So here is the circles. I want to top everybody up, and then the Consuming Stomp is going to happen after that. So this is when you want to top everybody. And now I'm just chilling because there's plenty of time to basically top everybody up. And as you can see, if you do everything correctly, there's nothing to be scared of. Of course, you need to avoid the frontal. You don't need to stay in the puddle, so you don't take extra damage. But other than that, it's a scripted fight. I guess the only other thing to mention here is that the little things that pop up, the little blobs that pop up from the trees, you actually want to run to the tank so he can get aggro on them. They don't hit very hard, but if you get aggro on several, it could be problematic trying to top people off. Make sure you go through the correct door. It's funny how many times people actually pick the wrong door. You want to pick the door on the right. And over here, you want to go in between those whelps that follow. Even with the route that we're doing with the skip, this is usually not a pool that you want to do. You can try, but there's 4 little guys and 1 big guy here from the shards. And your tank is going to get smacked, right? He's going to get a lot of debuffs, so you need to have a very good CC. And you need to kill that group very quickly. So you can just skip it, right? In a puck, especially if you don't have coordination, you can just skip it and then kill those 2 mobs before you go on the circular platforms. Now, these elementals, they do arcane bolts, but they don't hit that hard, right? Even on fortified weeks. Feel free to interrupt them, but they have another mechanic that's more important, and that's the Quaking Bane. That is going to put somebody in your group for 10 seconds into a sleep. So this is actually more important to interrupt. And your job here is mainly CCing those, right? There should be not that much damage going on, but if somebody's put to sleep, you can actually dispel it, right? So if you're a healer, you can dispel it as long as it's not on you. So 2 blobs here, 1 big mob, so watch for the circle on the ground, and here's the Quaking Bane cast, by the way. The big mob here actually does this stuff on the ground, and there's also a small mob that we put. Rune Keeper, I think is the name. So the Rune Keepers are very important because they do a lot of casting, but there's one important cast that you want to interrupt, the Bindings, which roots you on the ground. Now, the Rune Keeper was in patrol, so you don't have to pull it, but usually it's not that bad to chain stack them. However, if you pull the big mob, which does the AoE stuff on the ground, and the Rune Keeper, you have to make sure to interrupt the icy bindings that you just saw him cast, because if the icy bindings go off, they root you, and then the stuff that comes from the sky will just kill you, right? So this is incredibly important, right? You can let a sleep cast go off, but if you let the rune bindings go off while the AoE on the ground is happening, you might as well wipe, right? So I think we've seen all the important mobs so far. The Forbidden Knowledge is what does the AoE stuff on the ground. Here we have a mix of the Elemental and the Crystal Furies, so you can stun them. You can stun the Crystal Fury and the Elemental, and you can interrupt the Quaking Bane. And in here, as I said, you can pull as big as you would like. There's another patrol coming up with more shards. Just make sure that you feel comfortable into the size of the pool. There's going to be a lot of damage coming out, both to your tank and to your party. Somebody can get hit by the AoE on the ground, which in hierarchies might one-shot them anyway, right? Your melee can get hit. As you can see, my DK actually got hit by the frontal right now, so now I have to heal them as well. Luckily, it's just 1 stack, so my tank is not taking that much damage. But you have to be prepared with all kinds of situations in these pools, because there's different kinds of mobs and all kinds of different damage coming out. Also, somebody could get CC'd, right? So you can get slapped or something like that. And the runes on the floor that you see, you can pop them, so they're not problem during the pool. But if you are inside of the rune once it goes off, you also get slapped. So you have to be very careful. Alright, so another Crystal Fury pool here. Another stacks that are going to go off on the tank, and because we're doing the skip, we actually want to pull everything on these platforms. If you're not doing the skip, you can actually skip some of the trash, but I'll talk about this later, but we don't like the trash after the second boss, so we're just killing everything here and skipping that to the third boss. Not much else to say here, I don't think so. You need to kill basically everything on this platform to go to the next level, to the next platform. But as I said, we're killing everything there as well. I think we're going to see 2 new mobs over here. Let me see what the name was, because I don't remember it on the top of my head. So it's this big guys, Arcane Constructs. there's 2 on both sides of the place where you land, and those guys actually do the arcane bash, right? So this is also a tank buster, right? On fortified weeks, your tank, especially if they're not rotating their defensives very nice, your tank is going to take a lot of damage. So be prepared to spam him. Even if you pull only 2 of those on fortified weeks, if it's a higher key, he'll get a lot of damage. So make sure to do that. I don't think those are stunnable or CCable in any case, so just be prepared to heal tank. This tank was actually pretty good, so he didn't take a lot of damage, and it's also not fortified weak. But nevertheless, don't underestimate those mobs because they could hurt, right? And then we go back to the regular pools. There's another arcane construct here. As you can see, I am watching the Runekeeper. I did cap totem because you can stun everything here, and over here I didn't interrupt, right? And as you can see, a few people got hit by some of the stuff that hits the ground, which is why I said it's very, very important to interrupt the icy bindings, because this is what could actually kill people during those pools. Other than that, keep watching for Waking Banes. One thing about the Waking Banes, by the way, is that they usually don't target the healers. I think there's only one time that I actually got slapped. They usually target the DPS, which means that it's not the end of the world if one cast goes off, because you can dispel it. Of course, we prefer not to do that, but keep in mind that if one cast goes off, you can dispel it. Now, we can go to the second boss area here, but we are doing this extra pull here with those 3 shards because of the skip that we're going to do later. And this one is not scary. We've seen plenty of that. Of course, again, on Fortified Week, the tank is going to take a lot of damage. He is taking a lot of damage now, but don't be afraid to even use like a Spirit Link to save him or something like that, because those could be scary, scary mobs. And my cap totem is on cooldown right now, but you should be also trying to stun those mobs, especially if you catch them when they cast. The tank could reset the stacks. Alright, so that's all the trash basically in this dungeon, and all that's left to do is the bosses. Let's talk about, actually, sorry, I lied. It's not boss time yet. Next is the trash in the second boss's room, and this is actually, there's a few different mobs here, so let's talk about that first. I'm still in combat because of the shade. I finally go up, and the first mobs that we're going to see, and we introduced them here for the first time, is the Vault Guards. Now, those do a frontal, so your melee should be, actually I'm not sure if it's a frontal, but nevertheless, your melee should be careful in this boost. But the Ice Cutter is another tank buster. I actually had tanks die on Fortified because they thought, that's just a cast, you know. Bam, 2 of them cast at the same time, tank is dead. So your tanks should be prepared for this, and they should be rotating their defensive because the Ice Cutters actually hit very, very hard. And we put those 2 guards to the next pack, which has one of the our good old friends, the Runekeepers, so you want to interrupt the icy bindings there. The small elementals in those pools, they're not that scary. The Runekeepers are the ones that you need to be afraid of with the icy bindings. And there is also a mini-boss that's approaching us right now. Now, this mini-boss has a big circle around them. Now, this circle is more important for the DPS, but you actually want to stand inside of the circle because you are going to be doing more damage to the mini-boss. If you're outside of the circle, the boss takes reduced damage from you, so it will just die slower. The boss also does the Ice Cutter, and he has the Spellfrost Breath, which is a frontal. So the tank is going to take some damage from that frontal, and of course, you want to make sure that everybody else is facing away from that mob so they don't take extra damage. So there's one more pack on the other side, but because of the skip, we are going to pull the Vault Guards that you see at the bottom of your screen right now. So we get to the 100% trash count. So this is not a 45 week, so you're going to see my tank pulling all 3 Vault Guards into that Runekeeper pack. Probably a little bit scary on 45 week, but as you can see, those are actually very slow so there's actually some time until they come here. But on a Tyrannical week, you'll see that this pool is not that hard, and we also like CC them, stun them. The Vault Guards you can also CC, so as long as there's no icy bindings that go off, you should be able to pull this without a problem. After you kill the boss, you're supposed to go to the door left on your screen right now, but this is where we don't want to go, because the trash there includes those frogs that jump around, and there's the mobs that charge you and do an AoE called Bestial Roar. Now, this trash is not particularly hard, but it takes a lot of time to kill because the mobs are jumping around, so the melee doesn't take a lot of uptime on them, and they can also kill you if you get unlucky and you get charged and etc., right? If a frog stomps you, that's why we don't like that trash, and that's why we did everything we did so far, so we can skip it. But let's talk about the second boss right now. This fight could also be scary, but it's also scripted, so to speak. The first thing that the boss does is it summons those adds, which cast the illusionary bolts. You want to interrupt those, especially on Tyrannical week, because they actually hit hard. Right, so the boss is going to keep summoning adds. Here's another one that comes, and you also saw the orb that he does, which is a big frontal AoE, which is going to one-shot you. So for the first phase, that's it. You want to avoid that and kill the adds. On the second phase, he spawns those 4 adds that you need to kill in order to end the phase. Now, everybody needs to look for the orbs that come out of the boss, because those will also hit you very hard. And he's also frequently going to cast an extra AoE on the floor. You see that right now. Make sure to avoid both of these. Watch your feet at all time, because if you get hit on Tyrannical week, you might die, right? You might get one-shotted. And the other bad part, of course, is that he's pulsing AoE at all times. Usually you have lust for that boss, right? But he's pulsing AoE at all times, which means that everybody is taking damage. After you end the phase, which means you kill all 4 adds, he goes back to the first phase, and he rotates until basically he dies. He is smacking the tank relatively hard, but so I think... Oh, another thing, he also does a cleave, right? You see him doing a cleave every now and then, so the melee should stay behind him, or as it happened to the DK, Arcane Cleave, that's the spell. As it happened to DK, he dies, right? So we rest him here, but you want to make sure you're not in front of the boss, otherwise, as you saw, this is actually a one-shot. So we're going to go to second phase again here shortly. And the important part here is, as I said, everybody's taking damage. So you need to know who you need to prioritize healing and then stay close to them. So I know that the druid can basically heal themselves, the DK can heal themselves, if you have an evoker, they can heal themselves, right? So don't be that scared that people are going to die. They can pop a potion, they can pop a health stone if you have those, right? So, of course, try to heal them, but don't be afraid if they drop low. It's partially their own responsibility to survive as well. They need your help, right? I drop my healing tide totem whenever I can, I put riptides on them, but don't panic and die running into orb trying to heal someone. Because if you die, the fight is over, right? If a DPS dies at the end, you can probably still pull the fight off. So that's the important part here. And the other bad part, specifically this tier, is that if the thundering happens, you will have to be able to clear it. And it's very hard to do that if everybody's taking damage, there's orbs and stuff on the ground. So my advice here is try to clear the thundering early, and if it happens during the second phase, prioritize running to somebody to clear it as soon as possible, because if you get stunned, it's over, right? If somebody rots down because of the AoE, that's one person dead, but if you get stunned, the fight is over. Alright, so here, if we killed the boss, that would be awesome. The DPS, I guess, was not that bad in this group, but it could have been better, and as you're going to see, it's a very painful end of this dungeon at the end. But it's very important to prioritize the boss and kill it so he doesn't go into like 5% into phase 2, because he's immune in phase 2, and you basically have to kill all the adds. For that purpose, if that happens, in phase 1, you can actually switch to the boss and just try to CC and interrupt the adds, so you push him over and kill him before he goes into phase 2. We didn't manage to do that, so we had to kill all the ads. Again, trying to spread Riptides. I'm running Healing Stream Totem here, so I'm keeping both of these up and, you know, trying to keep people alive. So here's the skip. The boss is dead, and we run back through the door that we came from, right? Mind you, there are different skips in this dungeon, but this one is the easiest because, as you're going to see in just a second, it doesn't require any specific tech or skills to survive the jumps, etc. So we go through this edge. Of course, be careful with Quaking, specifically in this week. Run to the end of this edge, and there is a door that you're going to see when you look down. You want to jump on top of this door first, and then you want to jump on one of the sides. I don't think you need anything extra to survive those 2 jumps. I'm trying to heal people, of course, but I think both jumps are survivable even if you don't get any heals in between. And we are at the 2 breakers that do the bestial roar and the charge before the 3rd boss. So we didn't have to kill any frogs, and those 2 mobs are everything that's in between us and the 3rd boss. Both of these give 1.9%, I think, 1.95% of trash. So if you're at 96.1 trash count before you come here, you'll be at exactly 100 once you kill those 2 mobs. If you're less, you can actually turn back from where we are right now and go and pull a few extra frogs to get to 100% in case you missed something earlier. Now, this is not a 45 week, but on 45 weeks, those mobs are very scary because first they do the shoulder slam. The shoulder slam is a charge, and right now it doesn't do much damage, but on 45, it chunks you a lot. However, you can actually line of sight that. So once you see that red arrow on top of you, you can go around the door or a pillar or something, and they're not going to charge you. So that's huge because you take less damage. The other one is the bestial roar mechanic, which just does AoE to everyone. You basically have to heal through that. Again, on this week specifically, it doesn't do much damage, but on 45 weeks, it actually hurts a lot. Alright, and now we are at the 3rd boss. This boss got nerfed significantly, so it's not that hard anymore, but you still need to do the mechanics correctly. So, usually you don't want to lust this boss, you want to lust the last boss, so we have it on cooldown anyway, but the first mechanic is the frost bombs. So as you saw, you get the circle around you, and once the debuff goes off, you drop that puddle on the ground. You want to run out of this as quickly as possible. I usually gust of wind out of it, so I go out quicker, but it starts ticking and doing a lot of damage to you if you're not quick enough to get out. So that's why you need to be quick. And of course, you want to be spread so you don't get hit by the initial damage that you take once the bomb goes off from other people. The other mechanic is the Icy Devastation that the boss casts right now. He just targets one person, and you have to put a heal on them. It chunks a little bit. It's not too scary, but it also does AoE around that person, so you want to make sure that that person is away from the group, otherwise you have to heal a little bit more. So the idea here is you get the frost bombs, run out of them as quickly as possible, then try to heal people as quickly as possible before the Icy Devastation goes off, in case more than one person goes around that damage and takes damage, and then just cast a heal on the person that takes the damage from the Icy Devastation. When the boss jumps to the middle and casts the Absolute Zero, you have to get into one of these domes. What I do is I usually cast Healing Rain once we get into the dome, because then you're going to be healing everyone for 20% more once the boss does the cast. And the Absolute Zero cast is another AoE. Everybody just takes damage from it, right? And you have to be prepared to just cast some heals so they're topped off once the boss comes back. So yeah, it's a lot of damage that goes off, but there's nothing scary. There's nothing that should be one-shotting people up until like plus 20 key on Tyrannical. So as long as you do the mechanics right and you cast your heals at the correct times after the bombs and after he does the Absolute Zero in the middle, it's actually a pretty easy fight, right? If you get targeted by the Icy Devastation, you can also pop a defensive to make it easier for the healer, and it's rinse and repeat. Of course, you want to spread the bomb so there's like a path in the middle that people can actually run away from. And once you make a full circle, which we just did, as you can see, the first patches on the ground from the icy bombs disappear, so you have plenty of space to continue moving forward. Here I got closed by the icy bombs, right? But if you run quickly through them, you might get a tick of damage, but it's not that scary. As long as you don't stay on top of the patches, you should be totally fine. The other important thing is make sure you don't put icy patches on top of the runes that you have to run over once the boss goes into the middle, because obviously that would be very bad. But other than that, as I said, looking scary at first, but pretty easy fight. Usually I want to drink here before I go down, just to make sure the tank doesn't pull the boss, you know, and I'm at half mana. But after you go down, you're basically at the end of dungeon and the last boss. The last boss is what wipes bugs, in my opinion, here, because people don't do mechanics right. But in general, it's not the hardest fight around there. Just the problem is if you mess up mechanics once, you're pretty much dead. So, the boss has a frontal, Crystalline Roar, obviously, move away from that. And he also has a tank buster called Dragon Strike. The Dragon Strike is dispellable, so basically your job here is to watch when the boss is going to cast it right now, as you can see, and then dispel the tank. He spell reflected that, so that's fine, but if it goes off, you want to dispel the tank as quickly as possible. The other big part here is that once you start moving, you get those stacking debuffs which slow you down, right? So let me talk about it in just a second. Right now, he casted the fractures. You need to kill those shards as quickly as possible, because even if one of them goes off, you probably wipe. Everybody gets a ticking debuff, which chunks everybody down. On non-Tyrannical weeks, you can probably heal through them, but if you're a Shaman, yeah. It's not good, right? You won't be able to heal through that. So, make sure to help your DPS kill all the shards. The Dragon Strike just went off, by the way, and I dispelled my tank, so this is the other thing to watch for. And if you kill the shards, you'll be totally fine. The shards happen 3 times during the fight at 75%, 50%, and 25%. He is at 50% right now, so he casted the second shards, and we have to make sure that we kill them as quickly as possible. Even if one of them goes off, you wipe. Now, as the fight progresses, he's also going to drop those orbs that are going to just move around and sometimes chase people, and you have to just make sure you stay away from them and don't, you know, don't get stuck in between them, because if you stay in, they'll kill you in 2 ticks or so. So for that reason, I would say clear Thundering as quickly as possible here, because you don't want to be in a bad situation where everybody's away and you're blocked by some orbs and you cannot clear the Thundering stacks and you get stunned and you die. Alright, so avoid the frontal here, and let me go back to the debuff. So once you move, you get a stack of this debuff which slows you down. At 10 stacks, you are slowed by 60% or so. You want to move as little as possible, and if you stay calm for 3 seconds, the debuff goes off, right? So only move if you have to. You can dispel the debuff, but usually you want to keep your dispel for the Dragon Strike on the tank, so you should not be wasting debuff to dispel so you can move. Otherwise, your tank could get into a lot of trouble. The other thing to mention here is, I guess, you can use Gust of Wind and all kinds of other things to get away from the orbs, because they can kill you as well. And the last mechanic that I didn't mention is the AoE that the boss does. The AoE does a little bit of damage. You can heal through it. That's not that scary. So you should keep people topped off. They should be generally topped off, right? They shouldn't take too much damage, but that also knocks you back. So make sure when this happens that you're not knocked back into a orb, into a sphere, because that could kill you. So yeah, that's that. As you can see, we didn't time it. We were 6 seconds short, which is very unfortunate. I don't know, I did like 18k damage DPS, so I guess we could have played a little bit better. If we managed to kill that second boss without the extra transition, we would have timed this easily. But, you know, it is what it is. You cannot time all of your dungeons. This one hurt a little bit, but even in that case, you should use it as learning experience and take the best that you can out from that dungeon. As you can see, if you do all the mechanics right, we only had 2 deaths, right? People standing in AoE. So if you do all the mechanics right, there's nothing scary in Azure Vault. I'm not saying it's an easy dungeon by any means, but if you do all the mechanics correctly and you do not panic, you should be able to get to the end pretty easily. Of course, on Fortified weeks, the trash is going to be more scarier and it's going to hit harder. On Tyrannical weeks, the boss is hurt, but nevertheless, you have to do the mechanics right on both ends, no matter what week it is. The other thing to mention here is don't be hesitant to use any of your cooldowns, either on trash, on bosses, because as you can see, if everybody plays correctly, except from maybe the second boss, there's not much going on, right? There shouldn't be extra damage that people take, so if something bad happens, just pop a CD and try to save the situation. You should be fine, nevertheless, for whatever happens next. Alright, so that's it for Azure Vault. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Happy healing!